Hey, this is Rick Bone with Underwater Explorer. We've got some great in the Palm Beach area. Also, we've got 2 championship boxers to show you some new moves, and also a dancer choreographer. So I know you want to stay tuned. Let's take a look. We're diving right off Palm Beach, Florida, in about 60 feet of water, and this day the visibility was very good. And we went for some close-ups. There are literally thousands of fish off Palm Beach. It's one of the most fishy places I've ever seen in the Caribbean. And this diver's looking at all the nooks and crannies on the reef where most of the life resides. That's a beautiful soft coral. And you need to pay attention to some of these smaller fish because they're the main bounty of the reef that the larger fish feed on. It's all just an eat or be eaten kind of world down there. These sea fans were everywhere, about every 10 or 20 feet. And this again is a soft coral. You can see the wave action. On this particular day, the current was almost non-existent. This is a moray eel. He was about 4 or 5 feet long, and he was backed up in the reef, which is the way they mostly do. They hardly ever come out. This is on Breakers Reef, which is right outside of the Breakers Hotel in Palm Beach, Florida. And these fish schools are numerous. This is another spotted eel, and he was very shy, hardly came out at all. You can tell the way the fish are behaving that the current is pretty much non-existent. This is a blue parrotfish, and you can tell by the beak, and he actually eats on the reef. He was about 1.5 feet long, and you can hear an audible crunch whenever he takes a bite. Beautiful fish. These little guys are all over the reef. That's a puffer fish. He can blow himself up with water and make him look twice as big to a predator. We're cruising back over the reef in drift dive mode. Of course, that's a crab in the middle of your screen. Great eating. These schools of fish follow us all over the reef. And that's the dive guide. He's always with the line, and those are some eggs. And she's pointing to a 10-foot hammerhead shark right behind me, and unfortunately I didn't get the camera back soon enough to catch it. But that's the first shark she's ever seen that was a hammerhead. I've dove all over the Caribbean, and I've never seen as many fish congregated in one place as on Breakers Reef. These are called sheep's head, and they were plentiful that particular dive. And he had 3 or 4 brothers that followed us all over the reef. These yellows are just all over, quite colorful. That's a nurse shark, and they're usually anywhere from 6 to 8 feet long. They hardly ever bother you, unless of course you bother them. And that's a queen angelfish. Another soft coral. And we're trying to swim toward a wreck which is close by. We don't know exactly where, but sooner or later we'll find it. And these are more sheep's head. Matter of fact, that's as many as I've ever seen off Palm Beach diving. That is a fairly good sized grouper. He was about 3.5 feet long. And these blue soft corals are quite plentiful, along with another queen angelfish. He's doing what's called macro photography, fairly close up. And these soft corals I'd never seen before. And again, you always want to be with a line guide, because he's the one that has the float that the boat follows, and he's the only diver that is never lost. Now we finally come to the wreck that we were trying to find. And what they do, they drop you about 100 yards before the wreck so you can cruise to it in the drift dive, depending on the strength of the current. On this day, it wasn't quite that ferocious, and that's a sea slug. Believe it or not, this is an 8-foot alligator that is in 60 feet of water in the ocean. At first, we thought it was a prop and a model, and then it just swam away to the surface.
Welcome to Rick Bowen's Underwater Explorer. Come with us as we dive the Bahamas and Cozumel, explore massive coral formations, caves, and underwater swim-throughs on this episode of Rick Bowen's Underwater Explorer.
I'm with Spiderweb. He's a championship boxer. And what inspired you to start?
Well, it's a long story, but I took Taekwondo when I was younger. When I was 18, I'm a black belt, and I went to the Marine Corps. I was overseas. I come back from overseas, and my Taekwondo instructor had started kickboxing. And he had a fight he was supposed to fight, and he had fractured his hand. Taught me in the fighting form. I never trained for it. I just got in there. I thought I was a tough guy. I got in there and did it. That was actually the only kickboxing fight I ever lost. So when I got out of the Marine Corps and I was still kickboxing, I started taking boxing lessons. Because I could kick good, but I couldn't punch good. I just started swinging like a girl. So I started taking boxing lessons, and I ended up boxing.
Right. Stopped
kickboxing.
And what was your professional record?
I finished with a record of 22 wins, 3 losses, and 20 knockouts.
Okay, great. Was there anybody especially that inspired you to do this, or is it something that you just wanted to do?
My boxing coach, Dr. Morgan Hines, had a lot of influence in doing it. Because at the time, all I wanted to do was kickbox. And then I started doing both, and I would kickbox one week or box the next week, or sometimes I would have 2 different fights. And then kickboxing, that's when MMA got real big, and kickboxing phased out. So I just ended up boxing, and then I ended up fighting for Team USA for 4 years on the national team, being Olympic alternate. And then after 2000 Olympics, I turned pro.
Okay. And now that you're retired, you're teaching, and
Correct.
I understand that you've got somebody under your wings right now that we're going to talk to.
Correct. This is Rafael Tractor Oliveira. He's a 3-time UFC veteran. He's getting ready to fight for a belt in Canada next month. He has an MMA record of 14 wins, 4 losses, and he fights next month for the belt in Canada, 160 pounds for the CFF.
Yeah, CCF.
CCF.
Bushido, like Pride Rules.
I believe they know what they're talking about. You can hear those hits in the background. Pretty solid punches, wouldn't you say? Spider's quite the boxing coach, and if any boxers would like to be coached by him, just contact our show and we'll put you in touch with the right information. I'm with Kevin Swanson. Kevin, you have the distinct ability to gain or lose up to 30, 35 pounds in 2 or 3 months. How do you do that?
Well, it's more science than anything. It's kind of what you eat, kind of go low carbs, and your body actually uses fuel, carbs as fuel. When you deprive it of fuel, it eats its own muscle. As long as you eat protein, it'll eat its own fat. And a lot of it's science. There's some tweaking involved. I made it sound easier, but you have to do your cardio, you have to run, and you have to eat right. And cut your water out. If you're going to have to make weight in a sport like wrestling or boxing or MMA, then you can drop 8, 10, 12 pounds in a day or two.
I asked Kevin to demonstrate a couple of exercises, and I believe, as you can see, he knows what he's talking about. His arms are about 19 inches or more. That's bigger than most people's legs. And also quite a biceps exercise, and he's very much into overall exercise technique. Kevin, what are the keys to working out with weights?
Well, first you got to know what you want, then you got to know what you got to do to get it. If you want to be a bodybuilder, then you probably want to do a little less weight, warm up more reps, just off of common sense and logic, but you always probably, like whether you want to water ski or whether you want to bowl, you probably want to take some lessons, get good habits. If you want to be a power lifter, of course, it's going to be a little different. So you just got to know what you want, but just warm up good, eat good, and just be consistent. And that's about it, really, consistency.
Now we're back underwater, and again in about 55, 60 feet of water. And that's a basket sponge. And this is off Palm Beach, Florida. The visibility that day was not quite as normal is. Probably 30 to 40 feet, but you still have quite the abundant fish life. These reefs run for miles off Palm Beach and Fort Lauderdale, all the way down to the Keys, and then all again up to Vero Beach in the north. Most of the time, these fish are so conditioned they don't even know when divers are around. They kind of know they're protected. Although spearfishing is legal, most of the dive charters just don't engage in it. Occasionally you'll get somebody and they'll put them on the way back of the reef. But these fish are just all too beautiful just to kill off. Let me ask you something. Do you like what you do, or do you hate it? If you hate it, it's time to change jobs, or better still, it's time to make your own, invent your own, and create your own job, what you really want to do. You see, we're trained from the first grade till we retire to be sheep. We're trained to go to school, then get out of school, get a job, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, 40 years, and then they give you a gold watch. And then you wake up and say, well, what happened to my life? Where were these people that I wanted to meet, the places that I wanted to go to, and the things I wanted to do? So find out what you love to do and then do it. There are various books to help you do that. I think one of the greatest is by Tony Robbins. It's called Unlimited Power. In any bookstore, or if you don't want to buy it, you can go to the library and just borrow it. Back in the water, the visibility has improved substantially. And again, the currents are not that great, which is good. There's a balance in the currents because Palm Beach is known for a slight current, 1 or 2 knots, which you can drift with very easily. It's kind of like riding a bicycle, except you don't have any physical exertion. The current just pulls you right along. There's a lobster, and we were right in the middle of lobster season. That's the dive guide, you can tell by the rope, an underwater photographer. Generally on each dive anywhere from 8 to 12 divers go, and if it's more than that they split the group, but you always follow the diver and the guide with the line to the surface. That's a butterfly fish, and they normally travel in groups of 2. And this is the very end of Breakers Reef. But the mass of these fish schools is just incredible. A lot of divers from other parts of the Caribbean say, well, I've been in Bonaire, I've been in Curacao, I've been to the Virgin Islands, and we've just never seen so many fish congregated in one place as off Palm Beach, Florida. There's the other butterfly fish, the one's partner we saw before. That's a small grouper. He's a little too small to eat. If photographers see something they want to photograph and they're trying to get in a steady position, they'll only put their thumb down on the reef or hopefully in the sand so as not to disturb the coral, take the shot, and then swim on. And again, here we have another macro photographer, which simply means close-up shots. And that's a little small eel trying to come out. That's another queen angelfish. This is something you very hardly ever seldom see. This is a lobster hotel, they call it. And these were just abundantly packed in one place. You hardly ever see lobster out like that, but it's just the beginning of lobster season. They've got to know something's up. I'm with Sandy Lawson, who's very big in dancing. And Sandy, what got you into dancing?
Well, originally my mother got me into dancing, and my doctor said she's going to be really little, you need to get her into something. So she got into dance, something my mom always enjoyed doing when she was little but couldn't afford it. So I started dancing when I was 5.
Right, and do you specialize in any one form of dance?
Basically classical ballet up through about high school, and then I started in jazz and belly dance, and then I danced professionally in jazz.
Right.
So,
and do you look upon dance as an art form or physical exercise, or I guess a combination of both?
A combination of both. Definitely an art form, and it's definitely excellent physical exercise too.
Welcome to Rick Bowen's Underwater Explorer. Come with us as we dive the Bahamas and Cozumel, explore massive coral formations, caves, and underwater swim-throughs on this episode of Rick Bowen's Underwater Explorer.
You know, I was watching high school football the other night, and I remember my own experience when I was in the 8th grade. I went to school and they said, well, you need to play football. And I said, well, I don't know if I want to do that or not. And they sent Marty to come see me. Well, Marty was a beautiful cheerleader, and she talked to me, and I decided that I was going to play football because I'd go off the Gay Street Bridge for Marty. So nothing happened the first 2 or 3 games, and all of a sudden, the opposition threw a pass. He got blocked. I caught it and getting ready to give it back to the referee, and Bill Arnett, one of my teammates, says, run! So I run, scored a touchdown, pandemonium came loose. I had never experienced anything to equal that. And then after that, I figured that in football, you only look at 3 people: the quarterback, who runs the ball, and who catches the ball. And that's it. And nobody ever pays attention to the other players. And I played guard and tackle, so naturally nobody paid any attention to that. But then I discovered the heroics of high school football. You see, back then, if you were a pretty big guy, you had to play football. If you didn't, you were a wussy. So that's what most of the guys did that had the capability. Things have changed now. Back then, I was 6'1", 225. You can't even find a halfback for now. They're 6'6", 250. But it was fun. I enjoyed the games immensely. I didn't care for the practice. It's too much hard work. But that's just part of it. Let's get back to diving. We're back in the water on the reef, and we're working ourselves up north, again on Breakers Reef. And you see these tremendous fish schools that are just all over the reef. And the visibility has improved tremendously on this particular day. Most time the visibility is anywhere from 50 to 60 feet. It can go up to 100 feet and over. Usually that's in the winter months. Although the waves are high, the visibility is great. And there, of course, is a ray. And always look in these basket sponges because there's usually activity there. And this, of course, is the boat looking up. We're getting ready to go up top. And this is a ray again. And notice how you observe a stingray from the side. You never want to get over the stingray. That's what, of course, happened to Steve Irwin. And you just stay to the side of it and give it some distance. That's another queen angelfish. And this is a lobster pole that this guy's got. This is a tremendous grouper. He was about 5 feet long, probably over 300 pounds. And we're just coming to another wreck site. This is one of the best wrecks off Palm Beach. And this is a little conch that we found, and he was inhabited. And these wrecks, you can stay on the outside of them, and if you feel confident, you can go right inside. They're very safe wrecks. All the superstructure has been taken off. And we're simply touring around that wreck. Those are some more tube sponges. And these were in the middle of the wreck itself. And tube sponges were all inside this wreck. They know they'll be safe there from the currents. And this is again around the wreck. You know, many people ask, when is the best time to dive Florida? Well, basically your summer and spring months are the best, April through October. But in January, You can have the best visibility over 100 feet, so really year-round. Now we're in the most exciting part of the wreck. And this is on top of the wreck, but we're fixing to go inside. And that's where all the big fish are, namely the Goliath grouper. And these grouper can exceed 400 pounds, 6 feet in length, 7 feet in length even. This wreck has been down for about 25, 30 years, and that is a Goliath grouper. And he thought he was hiding. And this is a little turtle that we found on the wreck. Notice the visibility has improved quite a bit. On that day it was like 70 to 85 feet. And the water temperature was very warm. It was about 85 degrees, but there's a distinct difference in the water temperature on the surface and down 60 feet below. During the summer months, that temperature holds pretty well from top to bottom, but in the wintertime, the temperature on the bottom can be 70 degrees, which is, of course, very cool for water, and you have to wear a wetsuit, or you should wear one. This turtle was the same one that accompanied us before. And as you can tell, the current has picked up a little bit. These little swim-throughs and crevices on the bottom of the reef you want to pay particular attention to, because that's where the moray eels hide out. And this was a type of seagrass which I'd never seen before. You never get tired of exploring this reef. I bet I've been on it probably 80 or 90 times. There's always something new. Hey, this is Rick Bone with Underwater Explorer. If you want to be a certified diver, just call your local dive shop or the YMCA, and I'll see you next time on Underwater Explorer.